Hello, this is Dr. Damika Biawu. Welcome to Advanced Charting in Excel. Now, there are no advanced charting options, but you can do a lot with the options that Excel does have. You can build really advanced charts by layering different types of series on top of each other. So today we're going to build this control chart that you see on screen. So let's start. I'm going to delete it and then we're going to start all over again. Here's a description of the data that I have. I have a monthly stock return price for Google. So I've got the different months all the way to 2004. I have the closing price, the adjusted closing price. From that, I calculated the return and then extracted the year from the date. So let's go through it. Date and price is what I've got. Then I calculated return as the current price minus the past price divided by the past price. That gives me the return for the month. And then for year, I just used the year function in Excel to extract the year from the date. Once that's done, I created this table here with the data. First, I calculated the average return. Oh, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. First, I calculated the average return by year. So I extracted all of the years, 2004 to 2021. Then I calculated the average return for the stock by year. I used the average if function to check if my year, which is in cell G3, is in the column D. And if it finds it, it averages all the values in that column. And that gives me an array here of returns. Now, I then created a formula for the upper and lower line. And that formula is very simple. Do you know what? Let me escape. I'm going to delete all of this information and then show you what I've got on my screen. So to start with, I've got some conditional formatting in here. If we go into conditional formatting and click on manage rules, I've got at least one rule, but for right now, the rule on the cells that I've selected is a format only cells that contain, and in the drop down, I selected blanks, and then I formatted it as gray cells. Now, the reason for using conditional formatting for this is that I'm going to put some formulas in here. I want to build this table so that the list can expand. And when the list expands in the future, then we can change the table to incorporate. We can change the chart and the table to incorporate the new information. So I'm going to put in a formula for the lines. And the formula is going to check if my average return cell is blank. If that cell is blank, then it won't create the formula. But if it's not blank, then it will give me back the formula. So let's check and see how this works. For the lower control limit, I'm using the average. The average is the average of all of the return values that I have for the months that I have. That will be the basics for my control chart. And down here for deviations, I just set 5%. I want to mark all the returns that are 5% above the mean and 5% below the mean. That's all I want to do. So let's do the line for the lower control limit, and that will be equal to this number here minus the deviation. So the lower line will be at 1 minus 113. And I want that line to be, I want it to be just a straight line. If I double click on this, you'll see what happens. The values change because when you copy formula in Excel, it does what is called a relative addressing. So to circumvent this, I'm going to make my addresses permanent by putting $$ in front of the signs. All of what I'm doing is to prepare the data for building a dynamic chart or on a control chart. So I press F4, it's a shortcut. Function F4 puts the $$ sign in front of my numbers and gives me an absolute address so that when I copy the formula, the references don't change. Can you see? Awesome. Also, the conditional formatting at this point is working because when my cells are not blank, the gray formula goes away. So if I double click on this, it copies it down, move it to the end, double click again. Oh, sorry, I don't have anything here. If I drag it all the way down, I'm going to use all of these cells for my formula. You can see it just copies the formula willy-nilly. And what I want to do is, I don't want the line to show up unless I have a value in here. And the values in here will be updated on an annual basis. When you add more data to this series, this will recalculate, or it should recalculate, and give you the new values. Or you can put the numbers in here. For today, we're just going to add numbers in as we go along when I show you how to expand the list and therefore expand the table. So that's what we do preparing the data. But again, I don't want this to show up unless I have data here. So I'm going to modify the formula with an if statement. If, open bracket, I'm going to use Excel's isNumber function. It checks if the value in a cell is a number. So I want to check if average return exists. I could use if this is not blank, but I choose to use if isNumber. isNumber, this cell here. Then do the calculation. Otherwise, don't. If statement works that way, right? You tell it what to do if your logical test is true and what to do if it's not. So if it's number H3, I forgot the closing bracket there, then do the formula, otherwise leave it blank. And if I double click on this and copy it all the way down, you'll see at this point it stops working because my average return is now blank. But the formulas are here. I'm going to do the same for the upper control limit. I'm just going to copy this formula across and then change the reference. Change the formula. If it's number H3, then it should be the mean plus the deviation allowed. And if you, as you see here, mean plus 5 is 807, and I'm going to copy the formula down. And there are formulas here, but because this is blank, they don't print out. Now let's do the warning. The warning is a little bit more complex. If there are any observations that plot outside of the lower and upper control limit, I want to have a warning sign with a red marker. So first of all, I need to pull out the warning information. So I'm going to go equals, and I'm going to use the AND function. My logical test is to see whether 16 is between these two numbers. If it is, it will come out as true, otherwise false. And then if it's false, I can use an if statement to define what I want Excel to do when it's false. So I'm going to say, and this is greater than that. That's my first logical test. And this is less than the other value. I can't click on it because my formula has expanded into the J column. So I'm just going to type J3. Close the bracket and press enter. You'll see Excel comes up with false. If I double click on this, the formula works all the way down, but I'm going to modify the formula so we're fine for now. So this is false, this is true, this is true. Then I can wrap this in an if statement to define what it does when it's true and false. So the first one equates to false. It will do the second half or the second option in my if statement. So I'm going to say if open bracket, this is my logical test, comma. If it's false, I want it to issue a blank. But if it's true, I want it to print out whatever number is in this cell. So that's what I end up with. The first one works. I'm going to copy it all the way down. See? Now I'm going to do what I've done before. I'm going to wrap it in a second if statement to check the is number rule. So let's type it. If, open bracket, is number, average return cell, then do the formula, the whole thing. Otherwise, leave my cell blank. Now, let's copy that formula again. Can you see? It leaves it blank. Isn't that awesome? Do you know what? I suppose instead of leaving this blank, let's leave it as 0 because I want these to show up. Well, maybe let's leave it the way it is. So now I've got my values. I've got my lower control, my upper control limit, and my warning. Now I'm going to plot just the data that I have. If you click on everything, you'll have all these zeros that make it really ugly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the chart. Let's go into insert. These are going to be created as scatter plots, but let's go into recommended charts and see what Excel recommends. So it says I can have this or that or that or that or that or this. This is what I want. If this doesn't show up in your recommended options, you just go to all charts, scatter plot, and then do that and it will show up. But let's go back to one that Excel picked for us, this one, and do OK. And basically that's it. All we have to do now is do some quick thinking, editing, change colors, change values, blah, blah, blah. The blue is my average return series. The lower control limit is orange. Upper control is gray and warning is yellow. We're going to keep all the other color schemes, but we're going to change warning to red. Now, Excel has a lot of things you can borrow from, a lot of ways to edit charts. When you select a chart, 2 context menus shows up, chart design and chart format. For chart design, you can add elements, you can do quick layout, change color, change your styles. You can switch rows, not for this kind of cell, but you can switch rows so that rows become column and vice versa. So not the best, right? So we just undo and undo. You can select data if you want to add more data. Each series, you can add series, you can edit series. We'll do some of that later. You can change chart type, or you can move your chart to a new worksheet. You click on new worksheet, it'll go there, or an object, it'll be embedded in this sheet. I'm going to keep it embedded because right now I want all my data on the same page. When I'm done, I could move it to a new sheet. That's one way to format a chart. If you double click on the chart, the format chart area context menu comes up, and depending on what you select in here, the options change. Right? So we're going to do some editing in here. But before we do that, I'm going to show you the last one is the plus button here. Allows you to do certain things. You can add axis title. You can take away grid lines. You can take away your legend. You can remove axis information. We're not going to do that. So we're just going to leave the axis title, and the chart title here. Let's change chart title. Click on the cell. Sorry, click to select chart title. Go up here and type control chart. Press enter. The name changes. Click in here. Axis title we will call return. Enter. The bottom axis, it's clear that it's a date, so we're just going to delete that. There's no need to label it because we know what it is. Now, the other thing I want to do here is I'm getting ahead of myself, right? I created a label at the top of my picture here, and that label is done with formulas. If you want to see how I've created it, here is the formula up here. I used Excel's AND. The AND is a concatenator. I concatenated the text average annual return for Google and then added two formulas with brackets. The first formula goes into the year and picks the minimum value of year. So average annual return for Google, open bracket, and I've got it in double quotes because it is text. And then in here, I've said, and concatenate that with the main function and find me the minimum value in here. I selected the whole column so that when the data grows, it will change. And then I've said to max year and put that in bracket. And together that gives me annual return for Google from 2004 to 2021. If I tap 2022 in here now, up at the top, the formula should change. Right? But let's delete 2022. Okay, so that's that. So instead of having the label as control chart, I wanted to point to this cell that's called dynamic labeling, dynamic chart top, because it changes every time this value changes. I'm going to click in here and press enter, and I have my dynamic chart label. Now let's go edit the rest of the control chart. We'll click on here. If you double click, it selects only one value in the series for you to edit if that's what you want to do. Not one I want to do, so I'm going to click outside of the chart and go back and click in here and select the whole series. Now what we want to do is edit the series, the lines here. So I'm going to go to fill and line. For the lines for the first one, I'm going to choose to have it as dashes. And I'm going to remove the markers. The markers are the really prominent circles. So click in there, click in markers, make it none, done. Not much to that. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to click on, double click on it. Oh, sorry, I did the context menu. Click on the chart that shows up, then go and select that. Again, go back to line. I want the line here to be dashes, so it's less prominent. You could pick anything you want, and then the markers, I want them gone. Okay, so back to the chart. I've created the upper and lower control line, but I want it to start at 2014 so that these values here go all the way to the edge of the chart. So I'm going to select the horizontal axis, and now the context menu switches so that I can edit the horizontal axis. This time I want the axis option. So I'm going to click on the axis option, open it, and my lower bounds, I want it to be 2004. That's where my data starts. Press enter, and that takes my chart to the edge right here. In addition, I don't want the date to be at the top. I want it to be below the line. So we're going to go look at the label options. Click on label, and we can choose to have the label next to the axis. That's what we have now. We can choose to have it high or low. I'm going to put it low so that it goes to the bottom of my axis chart. Now, let's go back. I think I'm missing I'm missing one of the values in my chart. I'm missing, undo. I'm missing one of the series. I'm missing the average return itself. Can you see? Now, when Excel does this and excludes some of your data, or if you want to add more series to your data, you can simply drag it. It's added a value at the end, but drop the one I want. So you can drag it over to what you want. Another option is you can move your mouse to the edge and just drag it out and it'll add more data. Okay, so go back to the chart. Now this here, I don't want it this way. I want it to be prominent. So we're going to go back. Oh, it's re-edited my values. So let's go to the gray once more, make that dash, remove the marker. Done. Let's go to the return series. And for the return series, I do want markers and I do want lines. So my line is solid. It is not a dash. It is an actual line. Okay, so I'm happy with that one. Now let's go to the yellow. The yellow is my one in series. For the yellow, I don't want any lines at all. So no lines. And I want the markers to be red, but I don't want it to be filled with red. I want the borders around it to be red. So we'll go to solid colors, and for the marker, I'm going to make it red. Okay, and along with that, I'm going to make the fill of the marker none. So now I've got the border as red, and it's really small. So let's make this larger, 2 points. Press enter. Okay, not too shabby. I don't like it this way, but it's really tiny. How about we add some shadows to it, or glow? Let's do glow, right? Let's use red for the glow. What's happening to my warning? I think I might have deleted the warning. Did I do that? It's here, but I think I might have gone too far. So I'm going to undo it so that I can see. Okay, so it's selected. Let's go back to marker. Let's try automatic. I'm sorry, I need a marker. What I should have done is do no fill. I want a marker to mark it. That's what I did. If I remove the marker, then there's nothing to show the third value, the third series. So I want the marker, but I want no fill. And the border is showing up and for here, and now I'm going to put a glow around it, and I want the glow to be red. That's a little bit too much glow. Or maybe it's enough. Let's leave it. So now that my series is done, I'm going to go back and remove the glow from the zeros. In Excel, when you omit something, Excel has a tendency to put zeros in for the values that are omitted. The only way to suppress zero values when you build a chart in Excel is to have that value be an error. So we're going to make this an error. We're going to make it error. So let's change this formula. Instead of having blank in here, let me move this down. Instead of having blank in the formula right here, I'm going to output, if this is true, leave it blank, otherwise leave it false. No. This is the AND statement, the if with the AND statement. That's where I'm checking if my warnings, my numbers should be printed or not. So I'm going to delete this value here and type hashtag not applicable. That's one of the errors in Excel. And now Excel will take that cell. If it prints out not applicable, and it won't include it in the data series. So we would have successfully suppressed the zero values. There you go. So not applicable. not applicable, not applicable. Here is my control chart. Let's do some cleaning up of the data because nobody likes not applicable. We just don't. So we're going to layer on in here another control. We're going to layer on in here another conditional variable, conditional formatting. So conditional, we're going to set values, highlight cells with values equal to or that contain the text, hashtag, not applicable, and we're going to have those cells with a custom format. We're going to have the text be white with the background so that it fades into the background. The text color will be white, and we'll say OK and OK. And now, anytime we have not applicable, oops. Okay, so that's not working. I think I'm going to have to use the isError function. So let's go back. Because essentially that's not text, it's an error. So I'm going to go in here, manage rules. And the rule I just created is this one up here. So I'm going to delete that rule. And I'm going to do a new rule. And I'm going to use a formula. You can use a formula in your conditional formatting if the formula is if it evaluates to true or false. If it's true, the conditional formatting will work. If it's not, it won't. So we're going to use a formula called if NA. If NA, my error is a not applicable error. So if NA, open bracket, we click the first cell in here as reference, close the bracket, and we make sure that this here is not a permanent address. So I'm going to press F4 and I'm going to keep the column. I mean, suppose it doesn't matter. So I'm going to press F4 to remove the $ sign a few times. Now it will apply that test to every single cell in that list. And if it evaluates true to true, it will apply the formatting. If it's not, it won't. So the format I want to apply once again is have the text be white. Okay, and okay. Let's cancel this. Let me do the if NA on a sheet before I copy it. I was trying to remember the formula without having to think about it, but okay, so let's not use if NA. Let's use if error. Is error? Ah, okay, that's better. Is NA. That's what I want. The if error, if the if versions of those formulas require you to specify what it will go into, what to put in the cell if it's an NA. So I'm going to use the is error, and that just checks if it's an error and returns true or false. So let's do this again. Select the cells that I want to apply the second formatting to. New rule. Use a formula to define my error equals is NA, open bracket, and reference the first cell. Remove the $ signs. That will allow the formatting to be applied to every cell in the selection. And then format it to say have the cells be white. Third time is the charm. Or did I speak too soon? Yes. Awesome. So now we can also suppress the errors, ignore the errors, or select the whole set and ask Excel to ignore the errors. I'm just going to go up, find one of the cells with errors. I don't know why Excel won't allow me to do this in one go. But anyway, For right now, I'm just going to ignore it. That's what I have. This is painful to have to say, ignore all of the errors. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. So the error comes up and I can ignore all the errors in one go. So there we go. That doesn't help it for when you extend it, but this looks far cleaner. And that, my friends, is your basic control charts created by layering different charts in Excel.